They didn't thank her. They didn't ask questions. They just let her go quietly, almost like she never mattered. But she was the only one who spoke Arabic. The only one who kept the company's most delicate international deals alive. And when the new CEO decided to cut the legacy fat, he had no idea he was severing the bridge to an entire market. By the time they realized the mistake, the damage was irreversible. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or replaced, this story is for you. Subscribe if it hits home. They called it a realignment, but no one could explain what exactly was being aligned. The calendar invite arrived at 8:46 a.m. on a Thursday. No subject, just room 4C required. That was all. The sender wasn't even my manager. It came from a general admin alias. I knew before I opened it that this wasn't a strategy session. It was too sudden, too vague, and most importantly, too quiet. I walked into the room at exactly 9 o'clock. Bennett was already there. So was Monica from HR, sitting stiffly like a stand-in for a bad decision. I sat down without being asked, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. Bennett didn't waste time. "Elena," he started, his voice trying to do that professional, soft thing people do when they're about to insult you politely. "We're restructuring to better position Aris Global for future growth." I didn't flinch. I had heard enough of that empty language to know where it led. "Your role, unfortunately, has been impacted," he continued. No apology, no acknowledgement of what I'd built, the clients I'd retained, or the crises I'd resolved while the leadership team was still figuring out how to spell Doha. Not even a nod to the Arabic language contracts I just finished finalizing. Contracts worth over $20 million, 0 cents in long-term renewal value if handled by an amateur. I glanced at Monica. Her eyes dropped to the table like she was ashamed to be part of it. She said nothing. Bennett went on about modernization and streamlining, but it all blurred into one long excuse. They hadn't reviewed performance. They hadn't consulted the regional partners. They had looked at a spreadsheet and decided that I was a column they could delete. No one asked who would handle the delegation landing Monday morning. No one cared that I had spent years developing trust with their councils, negotiating legal nuances in Arabic that didn't have direct English translations. My fluency wasn't just in language, it was in context. And they threw it out like yesterday's protocol document. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for reconsideration. I simply reached for the envelope Monica slid across the table. Exit details, severance, a one-line acknowledgement of appreciation for service rendered. That was it. No handover plan, no transition timeline. I stood, smoothed the hem of my blazer, and looked directly at Bennett. He avoided eye contact. "Good luck," he offered, as though I were the one gambling. I nodded once. Likewise. Then I left. Not because I had lost, but because I knew they had no idea what they'd just done. They thought they had made a clean cut, but they had severed the artery, and soon they'd bleed for it. They never asked how I got the Gulf contracts in the first place. Not once. To them, it was just magic. Middle Eastern clients kept signing, kept expanding, and I was the person conveniently attached to that magic. I was just quiet and reliable enough to be ignored, until they thought they could replicate it. But no one ever asked about the 12-hour time zone shifts I worked through without complaint. They didn't know I had spent 3 years living in the region, embedded in a logistics firm where I learned the backdoor nuances of maritime routing codes and trade etiquette. They never saw the messages from Al-Mansour's legal advisor, always opening with, "Miss Thorne, your judgment is a shield." They never understood that trust in that region is built in silence, inconsistency, and in small gestures that don't show up on KPI dashboards. What they did see were numbers. They saw 3 accounts under my name and assumed the work was basic coordination. They never traced the full scope: compliance protection, real-time clause negotiation, and cross-border regulatory awareness. So, no, they didn't ask what I really did. And that was the part that almost made me laugh. When you build something people don't bother to understand, they'll be the first to break it without realizing it's the only thing keeping them afloat. I spent the first 24 hours doing nothing. Not sulking, not plotting, just cleaning. There's something strangely stabilizing about vacuuming the corners of a room when the rest of your life has just been swept out from under you. On Saturday afternoon, I took every binder off my shelf. Yes, real binders, labeled by region, by client, by regulation type. Pages I'd annotated by hand because the legal subtext didn't translate digitally. I sat cross-legged on the rug and flipped through notes I hadn't read in years. They were mine. Built by me, not because anyone asked, but because I knew one day it would matter. That day was coming faster than I thought. On Sunday, the first email came. Not from Bennett, but from someone I hadn't heard from in months, Elias Vance. He was the founder of Viridian Solutions, a mid-size firm I'd met at a conference 2 years ago. Back then, they didn't have the scale of Aris Global, but they had something better: curiosity. His email was short. I heard what happened. We're building something sharper. You interested in leading it? I didn't hesitate. While Aris Global was scrambling to prepare for a Monday meeting, they didn't realize I'd architected. I was reviewing Elias's infrastructure. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wanted the freedom to do the work that mattered without the pretense, without the men who talked in circles. Aris Global thought Monday would go as planned. Slide deck polished, floral arrangements rushed in, custom catering ordered to respect cultural sensitivities. What they didn't realize was that no amount of window dressing could replace what was missing: me. At precisely 9 a.m., 4 black sedans pulled into the circular driveway of the Aris corporate building. The delegation from the Gulf stepped out, calm and composed. Leading them was Sheikh Al-Mansour, the senior partner, flanked by 2 advisors and a translator. I recognized the rhythm of his decisions. When Al-Mansour arrived on time, it meant he was prepared to stay. When he arrived early, it meant he came to watch something fall apart. Inside the glass conference room, Bennett was standing just off-center, arms crossed with the fake confidence of a man who believed posture could replace knowledge. Celia, the CEO, wasn't there, too high up to attend or too nervous to watch. The translator didn't sit. Neither did Al-Mansour. He simply placed both palms on the back of a leather chair and looked Bennett directly in the eyes. "Where is Miss Thorne?" Bennett blinked. "I'm sorry?" Al-Mansour repeated the question more clearly this time. "Elena Thorne, the one who handled our previous arrangements." There was no answer ready. Bennett shifted his weight, forcing a smile that cracked too soon. "She's no longer with the company, but rest assured, we've reassigned the project to a fully capable team." The room froze. The translator said nothing. Al-Mansour didn't raise his voice. He simply gave a slight nod to his advisors, then spoke one line in Arabic. I didn't need to hear it to understand. They all stood. The meeting was over before it began. Bennett stammered something about continued dialogue, but Al-Mansour was already walking. At the door, he turned back only once. "Trust isn't a resource you can reallocate." And with that, they left. No outbursts, no slammed doors. Just presence, then absence. A silence that weighed more than any confrontation could have. I didn't hear about the collapse through official channels. I heard it through the ripple. Tina from legal texted me 3 words. They walked out. Gavin left me a voicemail. I never returned. We should have known. Eliza sent a screenshot of Bennett standing frozen behind the glass wall, watching as $24 million in international contracts evaporated. Not postponed, not renegotiated. Gone. There was no email sent to staff that day, just a closed-door meeting at 11 that ran until nearly 4, where apparently no one had a plan and everyone had an excuse. What they couldn't admit was that they weren't prepared to lose me, because they never knew I mattered. The real work I did was invisible until I wasn't there to do it anymore. And now they were left with a meeting room full of untouched tea, lukewarm pastries, and a silence so complete it became the only real feedback they were ever going to get. The first message came on Wednesday, short, desperate, and unsigned. "Can we schedule a call regarding some recent developments?" I ignored it. The second was longer, more formal, this time from Bennett's executive assistant. Bennett would like to personally connect about potential strategic consulting options and would greatly value your insight. Insight. That's what they called it now. The same insight they discarded without a meeting. The same insight they cut from the payroll in under 10 minutes. I didn't respond. Not out of pettiness, but out of clarity. Because once you've been silenced, erased, and quietly removed, you learn something. Silence is also a language. And they were finally hearing mine. By Thursday, I got a call from a number I hadn't seen in months. I let it ring until it hit voicemail. It was Bennett, of course. His voice was brittle, strained, like someone trying to sound composed while the building around him is already on fire. "Elena, I'm hoping we can talk soon. We may have acted prematurely, and there's strong interest in reestablishing a collaborative relationship. Please reach out." He didn't say the word mistake. He didn't say sorry, just prematurely. As if my exit was an experiment gone slightly off schedule. But I knew the truth. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they had finally realized the clients weren't just names. They were relationships protected by me. And without that continuity, all their promises, their data, and their dashboards meant nothing. On Friday morning, I updated my LinkedIn profile. I didn't add a new job title yet. I simply switched my visibility to private. No profile picture, no contact info. Just a blank banner where their panic could echo with no reply. The third message came by email again, this time with a vague offer of a compensation package flexibility. I didn't even open the attachment. I already had a better view, a better plan, and a better company. One that didn't see me as expendable legacy, but as the architect of what they were building next. When you remove someone you never bothered to understand, you don't get a second chance. You get a reminder. And I wasn't in the business of reminders. I was moving forward on terms I chose with people who never had to lose me to see my value. They didn't get a meeting. They got a contract drafted on my terms, delivered through my attorney. There would be no return to familiar rhythms. What I offered wasn't employment. It was containment. A consulting agreement that explicitly stated scope, boundaries, and autonomy. They accepted all of it within 48 hours. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no leverage. Sheikh Al-Mansour's office had already begun exploratory discussions with Viridian Solutions, my new firm. I didn't mention that to Bennett, of course. I didn't need to. The panic in their silence said everything. Meanwhile, Elias had looped me into two major expansion initiatives. Unlike Aris Global, Viridian didn't see Arabik as a challenge. They saw it as an edge. We weren't just translating interfaces, we were rebuilding workflows to honor cultural and legal nuances. I led both projects independently. No VP prefix, no committee filter. Just Elena Thorne, strategic liaison, listed directly on the partner documents. The last time Aris Global tried to pitch a Gulf contract, they sent a proposal without a name attached. The response came back in 2 sentences. "We appreciate the submission. However, we do not proceed without cultural assurance." That was their polite way of saying, "We don't trust you. Not without her." The truth is, I was never just a role. I was the conversation before the contract, the pause between decisions, the voice they remembered when choosing between firms that all look the same on paper. Aris Global never understood that. They thought trust could be reassigned. They thought replacing me meant hiring someone younger or cheaper. But trust isn't transferable. It's earned. I never raised my voice. I never leaked a story. I didn't need to. Every clause I write now carries my fingerprint. Every agreement signed under my guidance bears my name. And now, when companies talk about strategic credibility, they ask one question first. Who's handling the relationship? And more often than not, the answer is Elena Thorne. Because some names you can't replace, and some bridges, once burned, never rebuild the same. In the world we live in today, it's easy to mistake silence for weakness and visibility for value. Elena Thorne's story reminds us that real power often operates quietly. When her company cut her loose, they believed they were streamlining. What they were really doing was severing their own lifeline. The deeper lesson here isn't about bitterness. It's about knowing your worth before someone else assigns it to you. Not every betrayal needs a confrontation. Some simply need clarity. And when the world starts realizing who you were after you're gone, that's not an accident. That's design. Have you ever been replaced or overlooked only to watch things fall apart without you? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here. If this message struck a nerve, subscribe for more powerful real-world storytelling. You're not invisible. You're just too valuable for small rooms.